What was your immediate reaction when you first saw that footage?
Disgust would be a word, appalling, frightening. People can easily say, hey, he was an inmate, he did a bad thing to someone else, this happens. No, 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 it doesn't happen. Law enforcement, whether correction officers on the inside behind the jail wall or police officers on the outside, have a responsibility to protect the public. And the attorney general is correct, absolutely, to investigate this case and potentially as a murder, if not, criminally negligent homicide or manslaughter.
Yeah, and the Attorney General noted that the officers left their cameras on standby mode, only recording video but not audio, which I would have liked to listen to the interaction, what those officers were telling Mr. Brooks. What does that tell you, that those cameras were on standby mode?
I mean, at worst case, it was a dereliction of their duty because they have a responsibility not just to have it on, but to report it if they fail to do so when they're interacting with an inmate. But there's also an argument to be made that this was sort of an intentional act, that they were knowingly doing this and withholding or holding back that audio to protect themselves, meaning that they didn't turn it on knowing they were engaged, all four of them, which is a lot of people engaged in this misconduct. So it doesn't bode well for the officers and tells a story, potentially, maybe even intentional act on their part.
And speaking of that, how likely are criminal charges for these correctional officers? What happens next in this investigation?
So the attorney general then looks at this case and decides whether or not there's a crime that's been committed, whether she believes she can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. If so, they consider presenting it to a grand jury, and if a grand jury accepts this, they can charge these individuals as principals, meaning they committed either an intentional act, a reckless act, or a negligent act that resulted in this homicide. And these range from nonviolent E and C felonies, which is not mandatory incarceration, up to murder in the second degree, which potentially is up to 25 years to life in prison, which is pretty significant. But that's a determination of a grand jury. But either way, you're going to get a report or a grand jury finding of guilt. Pardon me, not of guilt, of reasonable cause to believe one of these felonies have been committed.
We're getting images from